Carla Jean took another drag from her cigarette, savoring the sensation of the smoke as it left her lungs. She hadn't smoked in years until that first fight with Mason, the moment he threw the bottle and slapped her. After that, she found herself back on the cigarettes, a pack every few days. She glanced over at Shannon, who was in the driver's seat. They'd been best friends since first grade. Even though Shannon was a few weeks younger, she'd always been like an older sister to Carla Jean, a protector, a counselor, even a bodyguard when a cheerleader had accused Carla Jean of trying to steal her boyfriend back in middle school. Despite the years that had passed, Shannon hadn't changed. Carla Jean looked at her with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. How lucky was she to have a friend like this? A woman who had made it big, yet still came back to their small town to help her, someone whose life had taken such a different turn. Carla Jean smiled nervously as Shannon glanced over at her. "Are you sure he knows I'm coming?" she asked. "Oh yeah, he might be a little too eager when he sees you," Shannon said with a light laugh. "Just push him off if he gets too huggy. You'll see, he's not as intimidating as you remember." Carla Jean paused for a moment to finish her cigarette, grinding it into the ashtray. The thought of being near Mason again made her hesitate. "I don't know. I don't know if I can see him, not yet." "Don't worry about Mason, Jeannie. He's just dying to see you," Shannon said with a laugh, using her old pet name for Carla Jean. It brought a small amount of comfort to Carla Jean's nervous thoughts. "Trust me on this. When you see him, you'll understand. The Mason you're thinking of? He's gone. And you've got some papers that this new Mason wants to sign." Carla Jean looked down at the folder of legal documents in her lap. "Okay," she said quietly. They pulled into the motel parking lot around 9 p.m. Shannon didn't even look at the office, driving straight to a spot at the end of the building. It was clear she knew exactly where to go. "Shannon, wait," Carla Jean said, her nerves getting the best of her as Shannon started to get out of the car. "I don't know." "Jeannie, honey, it's okay," Shannon reassured her. "Trust me. You'll see." They got out of the car and walked toward the metal stairs leading to the second-floor motel rooms. Carla Jean nervously scanned her surroundings. This motel wasn't the kind of place anyone would want to stay, it was more suited for late-night deals in the parking lot. She'd seen someone throw syringes into a trash bin as they pulled in. She wondered why Mason would choose to live here, especially after receiving that inheritance. Surely, he could have afforded something better. Her thoughts were interrupted when Shannon stopped in front of a door labeled 431. To Carla Jean's surprise, the door had a tacky printout taped to it, a heart, flowers, and the word sweethearts decorated with Go EXO written on it. It was gaudy, even for this place. "This is it," Shannon said, her voice filled with a mischievous giggle. It was clear she was looking forward to whatever would happen next. Carla Jean tensed up automatically, as Shannon knocked on the door once, twice, 3 times. The thought of Mason opening the door with that rage-filled look in his eyes made Carla Jean's knees go weak. When the door swung open, her eyes went wide, and the folder of documents slipped from her hands like a heavy weight. "Oh my God," she gasped. Shannon had been right. She hadn't told Carla Jean even a fraction of what had really happened to Mason. "Sweetie pie, you look darling." Mason's falsetto voice pierced through Carla Jean's shock, pushing her further into disbelief. The man standing in the doorway was, to put it simply, flamboyant in the extreme. The first thing Carla Jean thought of was that RuPaul show her younger sister always watched, with drag queens dancing in heels so high it made her wince. But this was even more over the top. The man was dressed in lingerie that seemed to blend 1950s pinup style with the world's frilliest vintage bridal wear. It was outlandish, an exaggerated long-line bra that barely contained 2 oversized, obviously fake breast forms, a girdle that cinched a wasp-waisted look on a distinctly male torso, and panties that seemed to be mostly ruffles and ribbons. His stockings and garters would have been too much even for a vintage Playboy model. Everything was covered in bows, frills, and ruffles, like some parody of women's clothing, and even his high-heeled pumps, which had to be at least 6 inches tall, couldn't be overlooked. He had a heart-shaped purse, oversized pearl earrings, and fake nails that extended a couple of inches beyond reason. But the most striking thing about him was his beaming face, a mass of platinum blonde hair, clearly a cheap wig, styled in a huge bouffant. A frilly pink headscarf, decorated with fake roses and ribbons tied in a bow under his chin, completed the look. And just below that chin, the start of what could either be a makeup disaster or a masterpiece. The heavy layer of makeup left his face with a matte, almost plastic doll-like quality, except this was the kind of doll that would have caused a scandal and lawsuits. Carla Jean didn't even recognize him at first. It wasn't until she saw the tattoos on his arms that she froze, gasping as she bent to pick up the dropped folder. "Well, look who it is," Shannon said sarcastically, mirroring the limp-wristed hand gesture of the man in the doorway. "Aren't we fabulous today, Cupcake? Cute panties, so fam. Love the little ruffled rear." Mason giggled, twirling expertly in his pink heels like an overenthusiastic cartoon princess. Carla Jean gasped again, finally remembering to breathe as Shannon glanced back at her. "Don't you want to be polite and say hello to your darling wife?" Shannon teased. "Oh my goodness." Mason squealed in his strained falsetto, stepping forward to do a shockingly delicate curtsy, despite not wearing anything like a skirt. "I know I've been such a terrible, good-for-nothing husband. I'm so sorry." Before he could finish, Mason burst into tears, sobbing uncontrollably. His high-pitched voice sounded almost cartoonish as he bawled. Carla Jean snapped back to reality when Shannon grabbed her hand and pulled her inside. With her other hand, she shoved Mason into the room ahead of them. The cross-dressed man swayed his hips dramatically as he sobbed, and the inside of the room was exactly what Carla Jean had expected, a clutter of frilly, gaudy decorations and clothes strewn across the space. Shannon took Mason's hand and said firmly, "Mason, dream pink lace, broken porcelain, pretty." It was almost like a chant. Immediately, Mason stopped crying, as if a switch had been flipped. He stood up straight in a girly pose, perfectly still, his eyes slightly rolled upward in a daze. Carla Jean, still shaking slightly, followed Shannon to a small writing desk in the corner. What is this?" she whispered. "I told you, Jeannie. There's nothing a little hard work can't fix," Shannon replied, her tone almost matter-of-fact. "Well, hard work and some experimental mental reconstruction techniques. When I said there are things out there, things only known to those who can make anyone disappear at a snap of their fingers, things that make Hollywood's version of hypnosis look like a magic trick from a bad talent show. I wasn't joking. I pulled a lot of strings to make this happen. But as you can see, I think it was worth it." Carla Jean couldn't tear her eyes away from Mason, still posing like a caricature of a princess. She never imagined seeing revenge in action would feel so deeply satisfying. Normally, Carla Jean couldn't stand to see anyone hurt or mistreated, but this was different. Mason had broken her in the first couple of days, like most do, to be honest. The last few months had been spent fine-tuning the final touches of his conditioning. Shannon gave her a confident look. "I can personally guarantee that no matter what happens, this pretty little princess will never hurt you or anyone else again. He can't even hurt himself." Carla Jean's voice was quiet, tinged with fear. "Can he hear us?" "Oh, yeah. Mason's still in there, fully conscious. Think of it like a one-way window. He sees and hears everything, but we only get the new Mason. By the way, he has a new name, Lucille Frufro. Very subtle, I know, but he picked it out himself. Actually, it was his second choice. He wanted Lucille Loves Cox, but the county clerk wasn't having it." Despite herself, Carla Jean laughed, snorting at the image of Mason, this bizarre drag version of her ex-husband, walking into the clerk's office to change his name to something that sounded like the title of a drag show. Shannon's voice turned serious as Carla Jean finished laughing. "I need to tell you something. I don't keep any secrets from you, Jeannie. When we conditioned him, we needed to know exactly what he did to you." Carla Jean averted her gaze. Shannon didn't push further. "It's okay, Jeannie. Believe me, I'm making sure this bastard gets everything he deserves. This big, strong man is going to experience hell in heels and frills. By the time I'm finished, it'll be revenge tenfold." Carla Jean stayed silent for a few moments, her thoughts heavy. "I want to know about all of this. I want to know what this conditioning does to him. I'll give you the full details later, honey. There are some very entertaining videos I think you'll really enjoy. First, we need to get those papers signed. But if you really want the gory details, let me just say this. As you can probably guess, Mason's taste in romantic partners has changed. But trust me, I didn't just make it that simple. What's the fun in that?" Shannon reached over and picked up a frilly pink robe from the room. She held it up to Carla Jean with a wink, grinning as she continued. "Whenever Mason giggles and minces his way into some hunk's bed, the real Mason comes out. He regains full control over his body, except for his voice, which still chirps and squeals in delight, begging for more. There's just one little catch. His body won't let him use any of its strength, not even 5%. In fact, I'm pretty sure he'd lose a wrestling match to my 5-year-old niece. I'd bet money on it. He can struggle and wrestle with all his might, and his partner will just think he's into some rough play. The more he struggles, the more Lucille's voice will let the hunk know how much he's loving it. I know. Very evil of me. But pardon me if I don't feel bad about giving Mason a taste of his own medicine." Carla Jean looked at Shannon, seeing a side to her friend she hadn't noticed before, the side that had been hidden behind years of classroom giggles and childhood secrets. She was unnerved by it. She couldn't deny that Mason had done worse to women, but the enjoyment in Shannon's voice didn't sound like justice to her. To her surprise, Carla Jean didn't feel the slightest urge to oppose her friend's actions. "Hunks?" Carla Jean asked, her mind still processing. "You mean, you couldn't even imagine?" Shannon smirked, dropping the robe and walking over to the desk where the legal documents were spread out. "I'm telling you, the videos I'm going to show you," she teased. "But first, let's get his signatures on these. I'm glad you contacted me before he blew through more of that inheritance, Jeannie. You should be set to buy that house in Charleston you were talking about and still have more than enough to live on." Carla Jean glanced at the documents and smiled. The thought of starting over, of a quiet life, had seemed like a far-off fantasy. But now, thanks to Shannon, it might actually happen. Carla Jean looked at Shannon, realizing just how much more dangerous and inventive her friend was than she ever imagined. It made her admire her even more. Shannon was like something out of an action movie, handling things with skill and ingenuity for Carla Jean's sake. Carla Jean pushed aside her moral concerns with a growing smile. For the first time in years, she felt a spark of real power behind her decisions. "I want to choose what kind of hunk he's looking for," Carla Jean said, surprising herself. Shannon grinned, eager for more humiliation schemes for the immobilized drag queen standing in the corner. "Oh, yeah? What are you thinking? Someone mean like he used to be?" "Whatever," Carla Jean said, her voice hardening, "someone who treats him like dirt. But no matter how they treat him, he'll treat them like they're his Romeo or something. He should be completely obsessed with pleasing them, like a parody of a 1950s housewife, a perfect homemaker." Shannon snorted with laughter. "Jeannie, you wicked thing. I love it. Fortunately, I was already planning something similar. It's a fantastic idea, and it shouldn't take long at all. I'll let you know when I get him on the dating apps. You can play matchmaker." Carla Jean glanced over at Mason's frozen form, thinking of all the pain he had caused. She thought about the bruises, about those nights she had fallen asleep crying, alone in a bed that only brought memories and nightmares of pain. She had spent every moment afraid he would return. She considered what it meant to match his cruelty, inch for inch. Did that make her just as bad, or worse? She decided she didn't care. "I don't want him to run off and start a new life. Not yet. I want to make sure every person he's ever met gets to meet the new Mason." There was sudden conviction in her voice, a tone so strong that even Shannon raised an eyebrow. "Exactly," Shannon agreed. It's no fun otherwise. Now, let's get him to sign these papers. Turning to the paralyzed, cross-dressing Mason, Shannon spoke in that same firm, controlled voice. Mason, dream pink lace, porcelain giggles, resume state, pink walk, and talk. Dolly pink, Dolly obeys. Mason snapped back to life, as if reanimated. Lucille, sweetie, we need you to sign those papers, Shannon said, her voice tinged with a snicker. Mason's doll-like eyes and wide, ditzy smile were on full display as he pranced over to the desk with a wiggle in his high-heeled walk. Carla Jean watched every movement, each step calculated, with his hips swaying exaggeratedly. His tiny steps, heel to toe, were straight and precise with every swing of his hips. Carla Jean giggled. Lucille, don't you want this money? She asked with genuine curiosity as her ex-husband gleefully signed page after page of divorce papers that handed over every penny he owned. Oh, no, I won't need money when I find a sweet, handsome man to marry, Mason giggled in his outrageous falsetto. For a moment, Carla Jean thought she saw a hint of pain in his painted eyes. Until that happens, Lucille here won't have any trouble finding some steady work to afford this room, Shannon added as she walked over to the motel nightstand and carefully lifted up a frilly pink pair of panties, heart-shaped cutout in the rear. They didn't exactly look new. Carla Jean's eyes widened slightly. Shannon smirked. As you can imagine, business is good. The ride back to Carla Jean's apartment was quiet for the first few minutes, but this time it wasn't from fear. She wouldn't be afraid of Mason ever again. That man was dead. Well, to be more accurate, he was imprisoned, trapped in the unbreakable, frilly cell of his own body. When Carla Jean finally spoke, Shannon listened closely, delighted to hear that Carla Jean was already formulating new ideas for her ex-husband's fate, almost as fast as she could come up with them. Back in the motel room, Mason was preening in front of the filthy mirror, staring deep into his own eyes. Inside his head, an endless, futile stream of rage echoed for no one but himself. But in reality, only a falsetto giggle left his painted lips as he pulled the corset strings tight. Lucille giggled and hummed to himself, overjoyed by nothing more than the sensation of satin and silk against his skin. He brushed out his wig and began to style it, eager to make himself as pretty as possible. After all, he had a husband to find, and to find the perfect husband, he needed to be the prettiest thing to ever grace a skirt and heels. Perhaps the man coming to his room next would be that perfect husband. And if not, there was always the next man, the next night, the next town. He would wait for the perfect man, the perfect lover, the perfect husband. There was literally nothing else he could do. Do not forget to join me on Patreon for exclusive content,